A million sons of a nascent stellar nursery blazed into existence, heralding an age of unprecedented connection across the galaxy, all because Lyra'Vak, the last true shadow weaver of Kryll, dared to trust a vengeful human, and he, in turn, learned to see beyond the ashes of his past. But before the statues were raised, before the Seed of Yggdrasil unfurled its star-spanning branches, there was only suspicion, ruin, and the cold vacuum of space between two souls from different ends of the void. Our story begins on Terminus Point, a remote Terran Confederation research outpost clinging to the edge of the Kepler expanse. Its metallic corridors, hummed with the low thrum of life support, and the anxious whispers of its crew. Kaelen Vance, his face usually etched with the focused calm of an Exo-Botanist cataloging new worlds, today wore a harsher mien. His dark eyes, usually alight with a quiet, almost spiritual curiosity for alien flora, were narrowed, fixed on the main viewscreen of the command deck. On it, a ship of unknown design, sleek and obsidian, hung silently against the star-dusted black. It was a vessel of the Kryll, a species that had, according to fragmented reports, mastered planetary-scale weather control, a power that made entire governments uneasy. Kaelen wasn't just an Exo-Botanist. Circumstance and a simmering need for vigilance, born from a past too painful to often revisit, had made him an informal security consultant on this isolated outpost. The Kryll ship had broadcast a single message. An emissary requested permission to dock, offering climatological stabilization assistance. Commander Eva Rostova, a woman whose pragmatism was usually a grounding force, was visibly on edge. Terminus Point had been suffering from increasingly erratic ion storms, disrupting research and supply lines. An emissary, Kaelen, Rostova said, her voice tight. Just like that, offering to solve our biggest problem. Kalen's gaze didn't leave the alien ship. No one offers that kind of power for free, Commander. The Kryll have been isolationists for centuries. Why now? Why us? His spirit, usually attuned to the subtle interconnectedness of living things, felt a discordant note in this arrival, a tremor of something vast and potentially dangerous. The airlock hissed, a sound that seemed to echo the collective held breath of the welcoming committee. Lyra'Vak emerged. She was taller than the average human, her form slender and graceful, encased in a dark, form-fitting suit that seemed to absorb the station's artificial light. But it was her head or face that drew every eye. 4 eyes arranged in 2 pairs blinked slowly. The upper, larger pair were a deep amethyst, swirling with inner light, like nebula trapped in crystal. The lower, smaller pair, nestled just above her cheekbones, were a shifting obsidian, reflecting the station lights with an unnatural clarity. Kaelen felt an immediate, instinctual recoil, a primal response to something so profoundly alien. Her species, the Kryll, were known in vague whispers as shadow weavers, a name that now, seeing her, felt unnervingly apt. Lyra'Vak's voice, when she spoke, was a low, melodic contralto, perfectly modulated, yet with an undercurrent Kaelen couldn't decipher. I am Lyra'Vak of Kryll. I come in peace, offering the aid of my people. Kaelen stepped forward, his hand unconsciously drifting near the sidearm he wasn't supposed to be wearing at a diplomatic greeting. Kaelen Vance, head of Exo-Botany, and currently very curious about the price of this aid. Lyra'Vak's primary eyes focused on him. For a moment, Kaelen felt as if she were looking through him, cataloging more than just his appearance. He saw a flicker in her lower eyes, a momentary shift in their reflective quality, as if they'd scanned him on a different spectrum entirely. There was a hint of something ancient and wary in her gaze, something that belied the official, sterile nature of her arrival. This was no mere diplomat. He sensed she was running from something, or towards something far more significant than mere atmospheric turbulence. And the raw, vengeful part of him, the part that had festered since the Cerberus Thii massacre, that took his family and his research team, whispered that whatever she was involved in, it was trouble. The kind of trouble that found you, even at the edge of known space. Commander Rostova quickly intervened, attempting to smooth over Kalen's brusque greeting. Emissary Lyra'Vak, welcome to Terminus Point. We are grateful for your offer. Our atmospheric regulators are under considerable strain. Lyra'Vak inclined her head, a slow, deliberate movement. The Kryll understand the delicate balance of planetary systems. We wish to share our knowledge. Her gaze, however, drifted back to Kaelen for a fleeting second, a silent acknowledgement of his suspicion. Over the next few hours, Lyra'Vak was given a tour, always under polite but firm escort. Kaelen made it his business to be part of that escort. He observed her, noting the almost preternatural grace with which she moved, as if gravity were a suggestion rather than a law for her. Her multiple eyes constantly scanned her surroundings, the lower pair flickering subtly, taking in details Kaelen knew he was missing. He learned they could perceive thermal signatures, electromagnetic fields, and, he suspected, much more. During a briefing about the station's weather woes, a sudden lurch of the station, a minor tremor from an ion surge, caused several crew members to stumble. Lyra'Vak remained perfectly still, her body seemingly absorbing the G-force without effort, a biological trait of the Kryll that allowed them to withstand extreme acceleration. Kaelen pressed her, subtly at first, then more directly. Your people control weather, emissary, whole planets. That's godlike power. What's the catch? Lyra'Vak's amethyst eyes met his. The catch, Mr. Vance, is responsibility. Power untempered by wisdom is destruction. My people learned this long ago. There was a shadow in her voice then, a resonance of loss that pricked at even Kael's hardened cynicism. And what brings this wisdom to our doorstep now? He persisted. Before she could answer, alarms blared throughout Terminus Point. Red lights pulsed, casting demonic shadows. Unidentified vessels approaching. Fast! A tech shouted from the command center. They're not Confederation! Energy signatures hostile! On the main screen, 3 jagged, brutalist ships appeared, spitting weaponized plasma. They weren't Kryll. They were sleek, predatory, and bore the unmistakable insignia of the Nova Cartel, a rogue collective of scientists and mercenaries infamous for unethical experiments and resource plundering. The same group Kaelen held responsible for Cerberus Theoi. A cold fury ignited in his chest. The station rocked under the first impacts. Lyra'Vak's eyes widened, all 4 pairs snapping towards the incoming threat. Her lower eyes glowed faintly. They are not here for the station, she said, her voice losing its diplomatic calm, replaced by a chilling certainty. They are here for me. Why? Kaelen demanded, grabbing a pulse rifle from a weapons locker. Because I can predict probabilities with a certain accuracy, she stated, her gaze distant, as if watching threads of fate unfurl. And because I am one of the few who understands the workings of the Chronom Heralds. Chronom Heralds. Kaelen, a code? The name sounding ominous. What in the void are those? Ancient Kryll technology, Lyra'Vak said, her voice tight as another explosion shook the deck. In the wrong hands they are unmaking. The cartel believes they can control them. They are mistaken. She added, almost as an afterthought. And they believe I can lead them to it. The immediate consequence of Lyra'Vak's arrival was now brutally clear. She was hunted, and she had brought her hunters to Terminus Point. Kael's initial suspicion felt vindicated, yet twisted by a new unwelcome complexity. This wasn't just an alien emissary, this was a fugitive with dangerous knowledge. The cartel. Here, his personal demons roared. He saw the faces of his dead colleagues, the ash of his burned research. Commander Rostover was shouting orders, trying to coordinate a defense. But Terminus Point was a research station, not a warship. The cartel ships were tearing through their minimal shields. We need to get her off the station. Rostova yelled at Kaelen. Scout ship, the Wanderer, in Bay 7. It's our only chance to get her clear. Go. Kaelen hesitated for a fraction of a second. His orders were to protect the station. But his gut, that same instinct that recoiled from Lyra'Vak initially, now screamed that getting her away was paramount, not just for her, but for whatever secrets she carried. And a darker part of him, the vengeful part, saw an opportunity. If the cartel wanted her, then staying near her meant staying near the cartel. All right, emissary. Kaelen gritted out, grabbing her arm. Looks like your diplomatic mission just got a lot more kinetic. Lyra'Vak didn't resist. Her multiple eyes were fixed on the tactical display, tracking the cartel ship's movements with an intensity that suggested she was seeing more than just icons on a screen. Their trajectory: they intend to board Sector Gamma. They will attempt to disable primary life support to force a surrender. Her ability to predict future probabilities was no idle boast. It was a terrifyingly precise tactical tool. As they raced through corridors shaking with explosions, debris raining down, Kaelen saw Lyra'Vak move. She flowed around obstacles, her body impossibly balanced, her G-force tolerance allowing her to take sharp turns and absorb impacts that would have sent him sprawling. A section of the ceiling collapsed ahead of them. Kaelen braced for impact, but Lyra'Vak, with a burst of speed that seemed to defy her slender frame, was already past it, turning to see if he would make it. They reached Base 7 just as a cartel boarding party breached the adjacent corridor. Plasma bolts seared the air. Kael returned fire, covering Lyra'Vak as she sprinted towards the Wanderer, a compact, durable scout ship. Kael, often used for his botanical expeditions. "Get the engines primed," he yelled, laying down suppressing fire. One of the cartel goons, a hulking figure in scarred armor, lunged at him. Kael ducked, slammed the butt of his rifle into the attacker's exposed knee, and then fired point blank. The satisfaction was grim, fleeting. Vengeance tasted like ash. Lyra'Vak was already in the cockpit, her fingers flying over controls that were, thankfully, mostly standard across Terran designs. The scout ship's engines whined to life. "Strapped in," she called, her voice strained but controlled. Her lower eyes scanned the bay, detecting heat signatures of more cartel soldiers closing in. "Just go," Kael yelled, diving into the co-pilot's seat as the boarding ramp hissed shut. Plasma fire hammered against the ship's hull. Lyra'Vak didn't hesitate. With a surge of power that pressed Kael deep into his seat, a maneuver that would have blacked out most pilots, she blasted the Wanderer out of the collapsing docking bay and into the chaos of the space battle. The little scout ship, designed for navigating asteroid fields, not evading warships, bucked and weaved under her surprisingly adept control. Kael watched, grudgingly impressed, as she threaded them through debris and enemy fire. Her G-force tolerance was clearly phenomenal. Terminus Point was shrinking behind them, burning in multiple sections. Guilt warred with the adrenaline of escape. "They're locking onto us," Kael shouted as proximity alarms shrieked. Lyra'Vak's amethyst eyes were narrowed in concentration, but her lower obsidian eyes darted around, tracking multiple vectors. "There's a probability stream, a narrow one. If I can align." She suddenly wrenched the controls, throwing the ship into a gut-twisting spiral. Kael grunted, his body protesting the violent maneuver. But he saw a volley of missiles streak past where they'd been moments before. "How did you?" "Probabilities," she clipped out. "I saw the firing solution coalescing before they committed." They were clear of the immediate battle around Terminus Point, but two cartel pursuit ships were peeling off, hot on their tail. The Wanderer was fast, but not heavily armed or armored. This was the turning point. They were alone, hunted, in a ship not built for war. Kael, the vengeful botanist, and Lyra'Vak, the hunted shadow weaver with her dangerous gifts. The fate of Terminus Point was unknown, but Kael knew he couldn't go back. Not yet. His thirst for vengeance against the cartel was a living fire in his gut, but now it was complicated by the presence of the alien woman beside him. One of the pursuing cartel ships gained on them, its weapons charging. A lucky shot grazed their port engine. The ship shuddered violently, alarms screaming. "Damage report," Kael snapped. "Port stabilizer offline. We're losing thrust vectoring," Lyra'Vak reported, her hands fighting the controls. "I can compensate for a while, but we can't outrun them like this." Her lower eyes, Kael noticed, were glowing with an intensity he hadn't seen before, almost as if processing immense amounts of data. "There's an asteroid field ahead. Dense. Uncharted. High particulate interference. They'll follow us in," Kael said. "Yes, but it will give us a chance to lose them, or set a trap." Her voice was devoid of emotion. They plunged into the swirling chaos of rock and ice. The Wanderer danced through the debris, Lyra'Vak's piloting skills again on full display. Kael manned the meager weapons systems, firing warning shots, trying to make them think twice about following too closely. One of the cartel ships, more reckless than its counterpart, pushed deeper, faster. Lyra'Vak suddenly cut their main engine, letting inertia carry them behind a particularly large asteroid. "What are you doing?" Kael hissed, waiting for an opportunity. Her gaze was fixed on her console, which Kael realized was displaying complex energy readings her eyes were feeding it. "Their shields are overextended from the pursuit. Their engine core, it's an older model, prone to overload if subjected to a sudden gravimetric shear. And how do you plan on arranging that?" Lyra'Vak pointed to a cluster of smaller, denser asteroids. "If we detonate a targeted gravitic pulse from our landing gear array, it's meant for planetary anchoring, but the field can be focused just as they pass between those two iron cores. The resulting distortion could tear them apart." Kael finished, a grim understanding dawning. It was ruthless, it was effective. It was something he might have conceived in his darkest moments of rage. They waited, tension coiling in the small cockpit. The cartel ship emerged, sensors sweeping. Lyra'Vak's hands were poised. Her amethyst eyes were closed as if in deep concentration, but her lower obsidian eyes were wide, unblinking, fixed on some point in space Kael couldn't perceive. "Now," she whispered. Kael, trusting her inexplicable certainty, triggered the gravitic pulse. The Wanderer bucked. Outside, a flicker of distorted space, and then the cartel ship, caught in the unexpected shear, convulsed. Warning lights flashed across its hull, before it erupted in a silent, brutal explosion. Debris rained against their hull. The second cartel ship, witnessing the fate of its companion, slowed its pursuit, becoming more cautious. Kael let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Impressive. And brutal. Lyra'Vak opened her primary eyes. They were shadowed with something Kael couldn't name. It was necessary for survival. They navigated further into the asteroid field, the remaining pursuer still a distant threat. Their damaged engine was making the ship sluggish, harder to control. They needed to find a place to hide, to repair. It was during this tense flight hours later that the major shift began. They had managed to put some distance between themselves and the remaining cartel ship, hiding in the sensor shadow of a rogue planetoid. The silence in the cockpit was thick, broken only by the hum of failing machinery and their own ragged breaths. Kael was tending to a gash on his arm, his movements jerky with residual adrenaline and simmering anger. He replayed the destruction of the cartel ship in his mind. Part of him felt a grim satisfaction. One less of them. But another part, a part he rarely acknowledged, felt a chill at the cold efficiency of it, an efficiency Lyra'Vak had orchestrated. They deserved it, he muttered, more to himself than to her. They deserve everything that's coming to them. Lyra'Vak turned her head slowly. Her four eyes focused on him, and Kael felt that strange sensation again, of being seen, truly seen, on levels he couldn't comprehend. Vengeance is a powerful current, Kaelen Vance, she said, her voice soft. It can carry you far, but it rarely carries you to a place you wish to be. What would you know about it? Kael snapped, the pain from his past, the loss of Cerberus the Civil, flaring up. Has your perfect, weather-controlling species ever lost everything? Ever seen your world burn because of monsters like the cartel? Lyra'Vak was silent for a long moment. The lights of the console played over her alien features. When she spoke, her voice was laden with an ancient sorrow. My world. Kryll is ash and ruin, Mr. Vance. My people are scattered, hunted. I am, as far as I know, the last who can truly be called a shadow weaver. And yes, I know what it is to lose everything. Kael stared at her, his anger momentarily deflating, replaced by a stunned silence. He had assumed he didn't know what he'd assumed. That her talk of responsibility was just diplomatic rhetoric. Then, Lyra'Vak did something unexpected. Her lower obsidian eyes, the ones that seemed to perceive unseen energies, fixed on him with an almost painful intensity. They glowed, faintly at first, then brighter, a soft, pulsating light. Kael felt a strange warmth spread through his chest, a tingling sensation, as if unseen fingers were brushing against his very essence. What are you doing? He asked, his voice suddenly hoarse. I am looking, Lyra'Vak whispered. My secondary sight, it perceives bioluminescence, energy patterns, the echoes of intent. Yours is turbulent, filled with shadows, yes, so much shadow, so much pain, like a shattered star. Kael felt exposed, vulnerable in a way he hadn't since he was a child. He wanted to tell her to stop, to look away, but he was frozen. But beneath the shadow, she continued, her voice barely audible, beneath the rage and the desire for retribution, there is a core. It burns brightly, Kaelen Vance. A resilience. A deep, resonant empathy that you try so hard to extinguish. A capacity for profound connection, like the mycelial networks that bind forest floors. You see patterns in life, in growth, in the universe. You seek to understand, to nurture. That is not extinguished. It is merely wounded. Hidden. Kael was speechless. No one had ever seen him like that. He had cultivated his vengeful persona, his cynicism as a shield. He didn't believe in goodness in himself, not anymore. Not after what he'd failed to prevent, what he'd witnessed. You're wrong, he managed, but his voice lacked conviction. Lyra'Vak's amethyst eyes, soft and understanding, met his. Your spirit, as you might call it, resonates with life, not death. The vengeance you carry is a heavy cloak, Kael. It obscures your light, from yourself most of all. The scout ship drifted in the silence of space. The immediate threat of the cartel felt distant. In that moment, something shifted within Kael. It wasn't absolution, not forgiveness for his perceived failures, but a crack in the armor he'd worn for so long. This alien, this emissary who was so much more, had looked past the monster he projected, the monster he sometimes feared he was becoming, and had seen something else. Something he himself had forgotten. The forced proximity of their escape, the shared danger, had stripped away pretense, and now, her unique perception had laid bare a truth he wasn't ready to confront, yet desperately needed to hear. He didn't lash out. He didn't deny it further. He just looked at her, a flicker of something other than anger or suspicion in his eyes for the first time. A fragile, uncertain curiosity. Perhaps, just perhaps, she wasn't entirely wrong. This was the true turning point, not an external event, but an internal perception, a bridge of understanding forged in the unlikeliest of circumstances. Their journey, he sensed, had just truly begun. The wanderer, limping and battered, eventually found temporary refuge on an uncharted moon, a desolate ball of rock orbiting a dying gas giant. Its atmosphere was thin, barely breathable, its surface scarred by millennia of meteor impacts. But it was hidden, for now. They managed to set down in a deep, shadowy canyon, camouflaging the ship as best they could with loose rock and thermal baffling Kaelen, improvised from emergency blankets. Repairs to the port engine were painstaking. Kaelen, with his innate understanding of complex systems, whether biological or mechanical, took the lead, but Lyra'Vak proved a surprisingly adept assistant. Her slender, multi-jointed fingers could manipulate delicate components in ways his couldn't, and her multi-spectrum vision allowed her to spot microfractures and energy leaks he would have missed. Days bled into a strange routine of cautious repair, silent observation, and slowly, painstakingly, shared words. The forced cooperation bred a grudging respect. Kaelen found himself watching her, not just with suspicion, but with a growing fascination. Her four eyes, which had initially seemed so unnerving, now held a strange beauty. He learned that her upper, amethyst eyes saw on a spectrum similar to humans, but with far greater acuity and depth perception. Her lower, obsidian eyes were the true marvels. They could shift through thermal, electromagnetic, gravimetric, and even, she hinted, faint tachyonic signatures. They were how she saw probabilities, the subtle currents of cause and effect rippling through space-time. It's not true precognition, she explained one evening, as the dim light of the distant gas giant cast long, eerie shadows across the canyon floor. They were sharing recycled nutrient paste, a grim reminder of their dwindling supplies. I don't see the future. I see the weighted pathways, the confluence of energies leading to highly probable outcomes. The more chaotic the system, the more diffuse the pathways. The cartel's actions, for instance, are often brutally direct, making their immediate intentions clearer to track. And the Chronom Heralds? Kaelen asked, remembering her earlier words. You said they were unmaking in the wrong hands. Lyra'Vak's expression grew somber. Her amethyst eyes clouded. They are not weapons, not by original design. They are planetary resonators, capable of manipulating fundamental forces on a vast scale. They were used to shape worlds, to heal them, or if the intent was dark, to shatter them. My ancestors, in their pride, nearly destroyed themselves before they learned restraint. The knowledge of their safe operation, their true purpose, is now held by very few. The cartel seeks this power without understanding its consequence. Kaelen thought of his own field, Exo-Botany. He'd seen ecosystems of incredible complexity, delicate balances easily shattered by ignorance or greed. Power without wisdom. He murmured, echoing her earlier words. It seems to be a recurring theme in the galaxy. Lyra'Vak looked at him, a faint smile touching her lips. Indeed, it is why my people eventually chose a different path, one of custodianship rather than conquest. At least, that was the ideal. Her smile faded. An ideal that ultimately failed to save us from internal decay and external predators. During one supply scavenge outside the ship, a rock slide nearly crushed Kaelen. Lyra'Vak, with her enhanced senses and incredible reflexes honed by her G-force tolerance, reacted with impossible speed, shoving him clear an instant before tons of rock thundered down where he'd stood. He was left shaken, bruised but alive, staring at her with wide eyes. Your reflexes, he stammered. A biological necessity on Kryll, she said, her breathing only slightly elevated. Our ancestral homeworld had unstable geology and extreme weather patterns before the Great Harmony. We adapted. In these moments of shared danger and quiet conversation, the barriers between them began to erode. Kaelen found himself talking about his research, his passion for the intricate designs of alien plant life, the almost spiritual connection he felt to the green pulse of living worlds. Lyra'Vak listened intently, her head tilted, her multiple eyes never leaving his face. She, in turn, spoke of Kryll, of its lost beauty, its unique philosophies. She described their legal system, the Tel Varad, where an accuser, before a judgment was passed, was required to psychically link with the accused and experience the alleged crime, the motivations, the emotions, entirely from the accused's perspective. It fosters empathy, she explained. Understanding. Justice, for the Kryll, was not about retribution, but about restoring balance, healing the rupture in the community. Kaelen, whose heart still cried out for retribution against the Nova Cartel, found this concept both alien and deeply compelling. So, you'd make me experience what it was like to be one of those cartel butchers who destroyed Cerberus Fee. The thought was repulsive, yet a tiny part of him, the part Lyra'Vak had glimpsed, felt a flicker of morbid curiosity, a desire to understand the why behind such evil, even if it didn't excuse it. The Tel Verid is a sacred, intensive ritual Kaelen, used only in formal judgments by trained arbiters. It is not a tool for interrogation, she said gently, but its principle is that true understanding must precede true justice. Otherwise, it is merely vengeance, perpetuating a cycle. His vengeance. It was still there, a cold knot in his stomach, but Lyra'Vak's words, her very presence, began to subtly reshape it. He saw the pain in her eyes when she spoke of her lost world. A pain that mirrored his own, yet she did not seem consumed by the same burning hatred. She was focused on survival, on protecting the knowledge she carried, on something more. One night, as Kaelen struggled to sleep, haunted by nightmares of fire and ash, he found Lyra'Vak outside the ship, gazing up at the star-dusted sky. Her silhouette against the faint nebular glow was striking otherworldly. He joined her, an unspoken truce between them. "You cannot sleep either?" she observed, not looking at him. Her lower eyes seemed to be drinking in the starlight. "Old ghosts," Kaelen admitted. He hesitated, then found himself saying, "The Nova Cartel, they developed a bioagent. Tested it on Cerberus The-7. My family, my entire research colony gone. Turned to dust and whispers. I was off-world, on a survey mission. I came back to nothing." The words came out raw, more pain than anger. Lyra'Vak turned to him. Her amethyst eyes were filled with a profound, sorrowful understanding. She didn't offer platitudes. She simply reached out, her slender, cool fingers gently touching his arm. It was a hesitant, tentative gesture, yet it conveyed more comfort than any words could have. "The universe can be a crucible of immense cruelty, Kaelen Vance," she said softly. "But it is also a place of improbable beauty and resilience, like the extremophile flora that clings to life on this barren moon. Life finds a way. Hope finds a way." Kaelen looked at her, at the genuine compassion in her alien face. He saw the strength that lay beneath her quiet demeanor, the sorrow she carried for her own people, yet she hadn't broken. He felt a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with her thermal vision and everything to do with a shared humanity. Or rather, a shared sentient experience of loss and survival. The romantic tension that had been a subtle undercurrent began to coalesce, born not of flirtation, but of deep, mutual respect and a growing, undeniable emotional connection. He found her presence, once unsettling, now strangely comforting. Her alienness was no longer a barrier but a source of wonder. He was beginning to see the universe, and himself, through slightly different eyes hers. They spoke then of the Seed of Yggdrasil. Lyra'Vak revealed it was an ancient Kryll legend, a mythical plant said to be capable of connecting worlds, not through hyperspace lanes, but through living, organic gateways. "My ancestors were its guardians long ago," she said, her voice tinged with reverence. It was believed to be a gift from the first weavers, a symbol of cosmic interconnectedness. But its last known location was lost with the fall of Kryll. The cartel, if they knew of it, truly knew what it was. Kaelen listened captivated. A plant that connects worlds. As an Exo-Botanist, the concept resonated deep within him. He thought of ancient earth myths, of the world tree, of connections that transcended mere physics. Myths often have a basis in truth, he mused. Perhaps the seed is real. Perhaps it's waiting. Perhaps, Lyra'Vak agreed, a hopeful gleam in her amethyst eyes. And in that shared perhaps, a new purpose began to form, a purpose that went beyond mere survival, beyond even vengeance. Their tenuous sanctuary was shattered when the remaining cartel pursuit ship, piloted by a tenacious and sadistic commander named Vex, finally located them. Vex wasn't interested in a subtle capture. She initiated a brutal orbital bombardment, designed to flush them out or bury them. The canyon walls around the Wanderer exploded. Kaelen and Lyra'Vak scrambled back into the ship, just as a near miss sent tremors through the ground, dislodging their makeshift camouflage, and nearly toppling the scout. Engine repairs are barely holding. Kael yelled over the roar of explosions and alarms. We can't fight her. Lyra'Vak was already at the helm, her 4 eyes darting between the tactical display and the raging inferno outside. We don't need to fight her directly. We need to escape her reach. The gas giant, its magnetosphere is unstable, highly charged. If we can reach the upper cloud decks, she'll follow, and her ship is better shielded, but her pilot is not Kryll, Lyra'Vak stated, a grim set to her jaw. She cannot withstand the gravitic shears and radiation bursts within the deeper layers. I can. She gunned the engines, the Wanderer screaming in protest as it clawed its way out of the canyon, narrowly evading another plasma blast. The pursuit was relentless. Vex's ship was faster, more agile now that the Wanderer was damaged. Plasma fire stitched across their shields, weakening them with every hit. The stakes were no longer just about their individual survival. Lyra'Vak carried the knowledge of the Chronom Heralds, and, potentially, the key to finding the Seed of Yggdrasil. The Nova Cartel wanted these things to control the future resources of stellar nurseries, regions of space where new stars were born, effectively holding the galaxy's future hostage. Kael felt his vengeance burn hotter, but now it was tempered with a fierce protectiveness for Lyra'Vak and the hope she represented. Shields at 20%? Kael shouted, bracing himself as the ship bucked. Lyra'Vak didn't respond verbally. Her focus was absolute. Her lower obsidian eyes were glowing intensely. Kael could almost feel the hum of energy coming from her as she processed the chaotic data streams of the gas, Giant's raging storms, and Vex's attack patterns. She was weaving a path through impossibilities. They dove towards the colossal gas giant, its swirling bands of color beautiful and terrifying. Vex followed, undeterred. As they entered the upper atmosphere, the ship began to shake violently. Turbulence buffeted them, and strange electrical discharges danced across the viewport. The radiation is spiking, Kael warned, his console flashing red. Our shields won't last? Hold on, Lyra'Vak gritted out. She plunged them deeper into a maelstrom of psychedelic clouds and crushing pressures. The ship groaned, metal shrieking. Kael felt his vision tunnel, the G-forces immense. But Lyra'Vak, though her knuckles were white on the controls, seemed almost at home in the chaos. Her body was built for this. Vex's ship, less able to cope, began to fall back, its shields flaring erratically as it struggled with the extreme conditions. Vex's voice, distorted by static, crackled over the comms, filled with rage and frustration. You can't hide in there forever. Weaver, the cartel will find you? Lyra'Vak ignored her. She navigated them through a particularly violent gravimetric shear, a maneuver that would have torn a lesser ship, or a lesser pilot, apart. Kael felt his consciousness fraying, the blackness creeping in. Through the haze of near unconsciousness, he saw Lyra'Vak turn her head slightly, her amethyst eyes finding his. There was concern in them, but also a fierce determination. He felt a strange sense of peace. If this was the end, at least he wasn't dying alone, consumed by bitterness. He was fighting for something more. Then, as suddenly as it began, the worst of the turbulence subsided. They had punched through to a calmer, deeper layer of the gas giant's atmosphere, a place where the radiation was strangely attenuated, the pressures immense but stable. Vex's ship was gone, unable or unwilling to follow them this deep. Kael gasped for breath, his head pounding. Did we lose her? Lyra'Vak nodded, her own breathing deep but steady. For now, this layer it is temporarily safe. But we cannot stay. The ship is too damaged. They drifted in the eerie calm of the giant's depths. The view outside was breathtaking, vast, swirling currents of exotic gases, illuminated by internal lightning. Kael found himself staring, the botanist in him fascinated by this immense, inhospitable ecosystem. He looked at Lyra'Vak. She was leaning back in her seat, exhaustion evident in the slight slump of her shoulders, but her eyes were bright. You saved us, he said, his voice filled with awe. Your abilities, they're incredible. A rare, genuine smile touched her lips. The Kryll adapted to survive. It is what we do. In the quiet aftermath of their escape, the emotional connection between them, already sparked, deepened into something undeniable. They were stranded, their ship crippled, in the heart of a hostile giant. But they were alive, and they were together. Kael reached out, his hand covering hers on the console. Lyra'Vak. She turned her gaze to him, all 4 eyes focusing on his with an intensity that made his heart race. He saw no fear, no hesitation in them, only a reflection of the same powerful emotion he was feeling. Kaelen, she whispered, her voice soft. He leaned in, and she met him halfway. Their kiss was tentative at first, then deepened, a desperate, reaffirming connection in the face of overwhelming odds. It was a kiss that transcended species, transcended worlds, a silent acknowledgement of the bond forged in fire and desperation. Her skin was cool against his, her lips soft. He could feel the faint thrum of energy from her, the sense of her alienness now an intoxicating part of her allure. Her multiple eyes, so closed now, were not unsettling but mesmerizing, windows into a soul that was as vast and complex as the universe around them. When they finally broke apart, breathless, the silence in the cockpit was charged, transformed. The fear and uncertainty were still there, but now they were overlaid with a powerful sense of hope, of shared purpose, and of a love that had blossomed in the most unexpected of gardens. "We need to find a way out of here," Kael said, his voice husky. "And then we find the Seed of Yggdrasil. Not for the cartel, for the galaxy, for your people." "For us," Lyra'Vak's amethyst eyes shone. "Yes," she agreed. "I believe I know where to begin looking for clues to its location. On Kryll, my homeworld." The name was spoken with a mixture of pain and resolve. The records were scattered, but some might have survived within the deepest archives, protected by the old systems. "It is a dangerous place now, ravaged and patrolled by automated sentinels, and perhaps cartel scavengers. But it is our best chance." Kael nodded, his hand still holding hers. "Then that's where we're going. Together." His vengeance against the cartel was no longer a solitary pyre. It was now fuel for a larger, more vital flame, the fight for a future, with Lyra'Vak by his side. The journey to Lyra'Vak's ravaged homeworld, Kryll, was perilous. They managed to effect rudimentary repairs on the Wanderer within the relative calm of the gas giant's deep atmosphere, enough to make it spaceworthy, if not battle-ready. Lyra'Vak's probability sight guided them through treacherous asteroid fields and past Nova Cartel patrols, her predictions often the only thing standing between them and oblivion. Kael, for his part, pushed the battered ship systems to their limits. His knowledge of engineering, gleaned from years of maintaining remote research equipment, proving invaluable. As they neared the Kryll system, a pall seemed to fall over Lyra'Vak. The vibrant energy Kael had come to associate with her dimmed, replaced by a profound sorrow. Kryll, once a jewel of a world, now hung in space like a shattered gemstone. Its atmosphere was a toxic swirl of dust and chemical haze. Vast scars marred its surface, evidence of ancient cataclysms and more recent, brutal conflicts. Automated defense platforms, remnants of Kryll's former glory, still drifted in orbit, some inert, others unpredictably hostile. This was my home," Lyra'Vak whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. Her lower obsidian eyes scanned the ruined planet, perhaps seeing ghostly echoes of its past splendor. Kael reached out and took her hand, offering silent support. His own losses felt distant in the face of such planetary-scale devastation. They needed to land near the ancient capital, Kryll Arca, where the Grand Archives were supposedly located. Lyra'Vak guided them down through the choked atmosphere, her G-force tolerance allowing her to navigate the violent downdrafts and unpredictable energy storms that now plagued the planet. The Wanderer touched down in the ruins of what might once have been a sprawling park, now a dust-choked wasteland of crumbling architecture and twisted, petrified trees. The air outside was barely breathable, thick with caustic particles. They donned rebreathers and environmental suits. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the wind whistling through skeletal structures and the distant, ominous hum of still-active machinery. Enemy patrols, both automated Kryll sentinels and potential cartel scavenger teams, were a constant threat. "The archives are deep beneath the old citadel," Lyra'Vak explained, her voice tinny through the comms. "The entrance may be buried, or guarded." Her thermal vision swept their surroundings, picking out heat signatures, mostly dormant tech, but a few active sentinels patrolling predictable routes. Kael, his exo-botany instincts surprisingly useful even here, noted the strange, hardy lichens and mutated fungi that clung to life amidst the ruins. "Even in desolation, life persists," he murmured, a thought that offered a sliver of hope. Their progress was slow, fraught with danger. They bypassed ancient, malfunctioning defense systems, their energy weapons firing erratically. Once, a hulking Kryllian war drone, its programming corrupted, lumbered towards them. Lyra'Vak, using her knowledge of its design flaws, guided Kael to target a specific joint with his pulse rifle, disabling it before it could open fire. Her combat prowess was not just about her biological advantages, It was about a deep understanding of her own people's technology, now turned against them. As they delved deeper into the ruins of Kryll Arca, the scale of the destruction became even more apparent. Statues of graceful, four-eyed Kryll lay toppled and broken. Intricate mosaics were shattered. It was a graveyard of a civilization. Kael felt a profound empathy for Lyra'Vak, watching her walk through the remnants of her heritage. Her vengeance, he realized, was not a burning fire like his had been, but a deep, aching wound, a sorrow for what was lost, and a fierce determination to protect what little remained her knowledge, her identity. Finally, guided by Lyra'Vak's memory and her EM sensors picking up faint power signatures, they found a hidden entrance to the sub-levels of the citadel. A massive blast door buckled and half-buried. Working together, they managed to pry it open enough to slip through. Inside, the air was stale but cleaner. Emergency lights flickered intermittently, casting long, dancing shadows. This deep, the ruins were more intact. They were in the outer sections of the Grand Archives. Data crystals, holding untold knowledge, lay scattered and broken in some sections, while others seemed miraculously preserved. The core archives, where information on the Seed of Yggdrasil might be stored, are further in, heavily shielded. Lyra'Vak said, her voice tight with anticipation and dread. But the cartel, they've been here. She pointed to fresh blast marks on a doorway, crude cutting tools discarded nearby. Kyle's jaw tightened. Thorn, he guessed. Dr. Eris Thorn, the leading mind behind the Nova Cartel's most monstrous creations, a man Kael knew from his past. Thorn had been a colleague of Kael's mentor, brilliant, but ruthlessly ambitious, eventually vanishing into the shadowy world of illegal research. It was Thorn's bioweapon that had destroyed Cerberus Vihai. The thought of him desecrating Lyra'Vak's ancestral home, hunting for the seed, stoked Kael's righteous anger. They pressed on, Lyra'Vak's probability sense on high alert, guiding them through crumbling corridors and past cartel booby traps. They found signs of cartel activity, discarded equipment, hastily accessed data ports. It seemed Thorn's forces were also searching for the seed, and they were close. In a vast, circular chamber, its ceiling lost in shadows, they found it not the seed itself, but a holographic star map, still faintly glowing, and at its center a pulsating glyph that Lyra'Vak recognized. The Celestial Arboretum, she breathed, an old Kryll designation for a hidden system, where the last Seed of Yggdrasil was said to be taken for safekeeping. The map shows its coordinates, but they are encoded, shifting. Suddenly, floodlights blazed to life, blinding them. Figures in heavy armor surrounded them, weapons raised. And from the shadows a man stepped forward, his face pale, his eyes gleaming with cold intelligence. Dr. Eris Thorn. Well, Thorn said, a thin, cruel smile on his lips. Lyra'Vak, the elusive shadow weaver, and Kaelen Vance. I wondered if you'd survived Cerberus V. Pity. It seems my work there was incomplete. Kael's blood ran cold. The rage he'd been learning to temper surged, hot and venomous. Thorn, you murderous bastard! Language chided. We are all scientists here, are we not? Merely pursuing different avenues of progress. His gaze flickered to Lyra'Vak. And you, my dear, hold the key to the ultimate progress. The seed and the Chronom Herald to awaken it. You will give them to me. Never, Lyra'Vak stated, her voice resonating with cold fury. Her 4 eyes blazed. Oh, I think you will, Thorn said. You see, I understand your people's little trinket, the Chronom Herald. It doesn't just awaken seeds, does it? It can also compel them. Force their growth, direct their pathways. Imagine a living stargate, grown in weeks instead of millennia, leading directly to the heart of a stellar nursery. Unlimited resources, unlimited power. He gestured to his troops, secure them. And the map data. The climax was upon them, not in the cold vacuum of space, but here, amidst the ruins of Lyra'Vak's civilization, surrounded by the ghosts of her past and the architects of Kael's pain. The chamber erupted into chaos. Kael and Lyra'Vak fought back to back, a desperate dance of survival. Kyle's pulse rifle barked, each shot fueled by years of suppressed rage, now honed into a protective fury for Lyra'Vak, and the future she represented. Lyra'Vak moved with liquid grace, a shadow weaving through the cartel troopers. Her G-force tolerance allowed her to perform incredible acrobatic feats, dodging plasma bolts, using crumbling pillars and debris as cover. Her lower eyes, glowing with intensity, fed her a constant stream of tactical data, predicting enemy movements, identifying weak points in their armor. She carried no conventional weapon, but her knowledge of Kryllian pressure points and her sheer speed made her a formidable opponent in close quarters. Thorn watched from a protected position, a sneer on his face. Impressive weaver, but futile. The cartel troopers were numerous, well armed. Kael took a searing hit to his shoulder, grunting in pain but staying on his feet. Lyra'Vak saw it, her amethyst eyes flashing with concern. She disarmed a trooper with a blindingly fast maneuver and kicked him into another, buying Kael a precious second. "The map data?" she yelled. "We can't let him have it." Kael knew she was right. While she created a diversion, drawing the fire of several troopers, Kael lunged for the console displaying the holographic map. He began a rapid data wipe. Even as plasma bolts sizzled past his head, Thorn snarled. "Stop him!" A massive cartel brute, augmented with crude cybernetics, charged Kael. Kael dodged the first blow, but the second caught him in the ribs, sending him sprawling, the breath knocked from his lungs. The brute raised a vibro axe. Suddenly, a section of the ancient ceiling groaned. Lyra'Vak, seeing Kael's predicament, and a structural weakness simultaneously through her multi-spectrum vision, had used a focused gravitic pulse from a small, concealed device on her wrist, a last resort piece of Kryll tech to destabilize it. Tons of rock and metal crashed down, separating Kael from the brute and several other troopers, and crucially, cutting off Thorn's direct line of sight. "Kael? Are you all right?" Lyra'Vak's voice, strained, came through the dust and debris. "Alive," he coughed, pushing himself up. "Map's wiped. But they'll have part of it from their earlier scans? We need to reach the Herald chamber," Lyra'Vak said, appearing beside him, her face smudged with dust, her suit torn, but her eyes blazing with resolve. "It's deeper in. If Thorn gets his hands on the Herald and even partial coordinates to the Arboretum, A could still force the seed, devastate that system." Kael finished. They plunged deeper into the labyrinthine archives, Thorn's forces hot on their heels. The environment itself became a weapon. Lyra'Vak, intimately familiar with Kryllian architecture and its remaining automated defenses, triggered ancient traps, collapsed unstable tunnels, and used resonance frequencies to disorient their pursuers. Kael, his botanist's eye now attuned to patterns of decay and stress in the ancient structures, helped her anticipate structural failures, turning the crumbling ruins to their advantage. They finally reached a colossal, shielded door. "The Herald chamber," Lyra'Vak breathed. Using a complex sequence of vocal commands and biosignature verification that only she could provide, the immense door ground open. Inside was a vast, spherical chamber. At its center, suspended in a shimmering energy field, was the Chronom Herald. It wasn't a weapon in appearance. It was a breathtakingly beautiful construct of interlocking crystalline rings and pulsating light, humming with immense, controlled power. But Thorn and his elite guard were right behind them, blasting their way through the